The Riverside Country Club was decorated exactly how Mom would have wanted it. White and gold everywhere, string lights creating an elegant glow, round tables draped in ivory linen. Their 30th anniversary party was in full swing, with about 100 guests circulating between the open bar and the hors d'oeuvres tables. Classical music played softly in the background, and everyone was dressed in cocktail attire appropriate for the upscale venue. I stood near the windows overlooking the golf course, wearing a simple navy dress I'd owned for 3 years. Nothing designer, nothing flashy. Comfortable heels from DSW. Minimal jewelry. I knew exactly like what my family had always assumed I was. The less successful younger daughter. My older sister Victoria held court near the center of the room, surrounded by admirers. She wore a rose gold dress that probably cost what I spent on groceries in 3 months. Or what my family thought I spent on groceries. Her diamond earrings caught the light every time she moved her head. Her husband Brandon stood beside her looking equally polished in a custom suit, discussing his latest real estate development project with a circle of impressed listeners. "Savannah," Mom said, appearing at my elbow with her usual concerned expression. "You're hiding by the windows again. Come mingle. There are people here who'd love to meet you." "I'm fine here, Mom," I said, sipping my sparkling water. "I didn't drink at family events. Needed to stay alert." "But you should be networking," she insisted gently. "Victoria's been introducing Brandon to several potential clients tonight. You never know when you might meet someone who could help with job opportunities." "Job opportunities? As if I needed them." "I appreciate that, Mom, but I'm okay," I said. She sighed, that particular sigh that conveyed loving disappointment. "I just worry about you, honey. You're 32. Still renting that little apartment downtown. Still doing freelance graphic design work that barely pays the bills. Victoria's built such a stable life. The house in Westchester, Brandon's company, their investment portfolio. I just want the same security for you." "I'm doing fine," I said evenly. "Are you though?" she asked, her voice dropping to a whisper. "Your father mentioned you asked to borrow money last year for a car repair. That's not fine, Savannah. That's struggling." I had asked to borrow $800 for a car repair. Not because I needed it. My liquid assets were in the 7 figures. But because my 12-year-old Civic had needed a new transmission and I'd wanted to see if my parents would offer to help without me having to ask. They'd hemmed and hawed about it for 3 days before reluctantly agreeing to lend me the money. I'd paid them back in 2 weeks. They'd seemed surprised. "That was a temporary situation," I said. "The car's fine now." "But it's a 12-year-old Honda Civic," Mom said. "Honey, at some point you need to accept that you deserve better. You deserve a reliable car, a stable job, a nice home. You're so talented, but this freelance thing isn't working. Maybe it's time to consider a corporate position. Victoria knows someone in marketing at her firm." "Mom," I interrupted gently, "I appreciate the concern, but I'm genuinely okay with my life." She looked at me with such pity it almost made me laugh. "Oh, sweetheart. I know you're trying to stay positive, but we can all see you're struggling. There's no shame in accepting help from family." Before I could respond, the sound of a spoon tapping against crystal rang through the room. Dad stood at the front, microphone in hand, beaming at the assembled guests. "Thank you all for coming to celebrate 30 years of marriage with my beautiful wife," he began. The crowd applauded. Mom hurried to join him at the front, her face glowing with happiness. I stayed by the windows watching. Dad's speech was what you'd expect. Touching memories of meeting Mom in college, stories about early married life, jokes about surviving 3 decades together. The guests laughed and applauded at all the right moments. Victoria wiped away artful tears, her arm linked through Brandon's. "We've been blessed with 2 wonderful daughters," Dad continued, and I felt the familiar knot form in my stomach. "Victoria, who's built such an impressive life with Brandon. We're so proud of everything you've accomplished. Your career, your beautiful home, the life you've created." Victoria smiled gracefully, accepting the praise as her due. "And Savannah," Dad said, his tone shifting slightly, becoming more gentle, more careful, "who's still finding her way. We love you both so much and we wanted to do something special tonight to show that love." Here it came. I'd suspected they were planning something when they'd insisted I attend tonight despite my initial attempt to decline. 30 years ago, we bought our first significant asset as a married couple, Dad said. The lake house up in Pine Ridge. 3 bedrooms right on the water, beautiful views. We've spent so many summers there as a family. It holds precious memories for all of us. The lake house. I knew it well. Had spent childhood summers there swimming and fishing and reading on the dock. It was a beautiful property. Or it had been before my parents had stopped maintaining it properly about 8 years ago when their finances had gotten tight. We've decided, Mom said, taking the microphone from Dad, that it's time to pass the lake house on to the next generation. We want it to stay in the family to create new memories for our daughters and their families. I took another sip of sparkling water. After much consideration, Dad said, taking the microphone back, we've decided to give the lake house to Victoria. The room erupted in applause. Victoria gasped theatrically, covering her mouth with her hands. Brandon hugged her, looking appropriately grateful and surprised. She deserves it more, Dad continued once the applause died down. Victoria's worked so hard, built such a wonderful life. She and Brandon will actually be able to use the property, maintain it properly, create those family memories we always hoped for. More applause. Victoria was crying now, real tears this time, I thought. She probably genuinely was touched by the gesture. Savannah, Mom added, her voice gentle and apologetic, we hope you understand. We love you just as much, but Victoria's in a position to really appreciate and care for the property. Once you get more established in your career, once you've built more financial stability, there will be other opportunities. I smiled and nodded. Stayed quiet. Let them have their moment. Victoria stood and made her way to the microphone, wiping her eyes. Mom, Dad, I don't know what to say. This is so generous. The lake house means everything to our family. Brandon and I promise to take excellent care of it. We'll restore it to its former glory, create new memories there. Thank you so much. She looked at me across the room, her expression a mix of triumph and something that might have been sympathy. Savannah, I hope you're not upset. I know we both have memories there. You're always welcome to visit, of course. That's very kind, I said evenly. The party continued. People congratulated Victoria and Brandon, admired their generosity in accepting such a wonderful gift, discussed restoration plans for the property. I stayed by the windows, smiling when appropriate, accepting the occasional sympathetic look from guests who clearly viewed me as the disappointing younger sister who'd been rightfully passed over. Around 11 I made my excuses and left. Drove my 12-year-old Civic back to my little apartment downtown. The 2-bedroom unit in a converted warehouse building that I actually owned, along with the entire building and 3 others in the same neighborhood. Parked in my designated spot in the secured garage and took the elevator up to the 4th floor. My apartment was quiet, spacious, with exposed brick and floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city. I'd purchased the building 5 years ago for $2.3 million in a foreclosure auction, renovated all 12 units, and now collected $28,000 monthly in rental income while living in one of the units myself. But my family didn't know that. They knew I lived downtown in what they assumed was a rental apartment. They saw the building's plain exterior and assumed struggling artist, not property owner. I changed into comfortable clothes and opened my laptop. Pulled up the file I'd been reviewing earlier. Property records for 47 Lakeshore Drive, Pine Ridge. The lake house. My lake house. The one I'd purchased from the bank in 2018 after my parents had defaulted on the mortgage. They'd never told me about the financial trouble. Never mentioned they were 3 months behind on payments, that the bank was starting foreclosure proceedings. I'd found out by accident when I was doing research on distressed properties in the Pine Ridge area for potential investment opportunities. Had seen my parents' names on the foreclosure list. I'd contacted them immediately, offered to help. They'd been embarrassed, defensive. Said they could handle it. Said they just needed a few more months. Said they didn't want charity from their daughter who was barely making ends meet herself. A month later the bank had foreclosed. The property had gone to auction. I'd bought it for $340,000, about $60,000 below market value because it needed significant repairs and the auction had limited bidders. I'd put another $80,000 into renovations. New roof, updated plumbing and electrical, refinished floors, new dock. The property was now worth approximately $680,000. I'd never told my parents. They'd assumed the bank had sold it to some investor who was turning it into a rental. They'd mourned the loss privately, ashamed of their financial failure. What they didn't know was that I'd kept the property vacant, maintained it immaculately through a property management company, and paid all the taxes and insurance for 6 years. Waiting. For what, I wasn't sure. Maybe for them to ask about my life. Maybe for them to wonder how I could afford things. Maybe for some acknowledgement that I might be more than the struggling freelance designer they'd imagined. But they'd never asked. And now they tried to give away property they didn't own to a daughter they valued more. I pulled out my phone and called Douglas Winters, the property manager who oversaw my lake house along with 2 other properties I owned in Pine Ridge. "Savannah," he answered. "Everything okay?" "Quick question," I said. "Is the security system active at the lake house?" "Always," he said. "We monitor it 24/7. "Why?" "My sister may try to access the property tomorrow. She's under the impression my parents gave it to her." There was a pause. "Your parents tried to give her a property they don't own?" "They don't know they don't own it," I explained. "It was foreclosed on 6 years ago. I bought it at auction. They were never told who purchased it. And they think they still own it," Douglas said slowly. "Wow. If my sister shows up tomorrow, please have your staff explain the situation professionally. She's not trespassing maliciously, she genuinely believes she has permission to be there." "Understood," Douglas said. "I'll brief the gate staff and our property supervisor. We'll handle it diplomatically." "Thank you," I said. "Can I ask what you're planning to do?" he asked. "After 6 years of keeping this quiet?" "I'm planning to let reality speak for itself," I said. "They'll figure it out tomorrow." I slept well that night. Woke at 7, made coffee, checked my email. My property management company sent monthly reports on all my holdings. 17 properties total, ranging from the downtown apartment buildings to a small commercial plaza to residential rentals scattered across 3 counties. Total portfolio value, approximately $12.4 million. Net monthly income after all expenses, about $47,000. But my family thought I was a struggling graphic designer who needed to borrow money for car repairs. At 9:30 a.m. my phone rang. Victoria's number. I let it ring through to voicemail. She called again immediately. Then again. On the 4th call I answered. "Hello." "Savannah," she shrieked, her voice so loud I had to hold the phone away from my ear. "What the hell is happening?" "Good morning, Victoria," I said calmly. "What seems to be the problem?" The problem. "I'm at the lake house." "Well, I'm at the gate to the lake house, and there's a security guard here who won't let me in. He says I'm trespassing. He says some woman named Brooks purchased this property 6 years ago and I don't have permission to be here." "That is what happened," I said. "What do you mean that's what happened?" "Mom and Dad gave me this property last night. They own it. This is clearly some kind of mistake or fraud or—" "It's not a mistake," I interrupted gently. "And it's not fraud. The property was foreclosed on by First National Bank in 2018 due to non-payment. It was sold at auction to the highest bidder." "Who was me?" Silence. Complete absolute silence. "What?" she finally whispered. "I purchased 47 Lakeshore Drive from First National Bank at a foreclosure auction on March 15, 2018. I said, my voice factual and calm. "Paid $340,000. Spent another $80,000 on renovations. I've owned the property for 6 years." "That's impossible," she said. "You don't have that kind of money. You barely have money for rent. You drive a car from 2012. You asked to borrow money for repairs last year." "I have considerably more money than you've assumed," I said. "The car is from 2012 because it works perfectly and I see no reason to replace it. And I borrowed money for repairs as a test to see if our parents would help without my having to grovel. They didn't particularly." "You bought the lake house?" she said, her voice rising again. "With what money?" "With money I earned and saved through strategic real estate investments over the past decade," I said. "The lake house is one of 17 properties in my current portfolio." 17 properties, she repeated faintly. "Yes. Mostly residential rentals, some commercial space. Total value around $12.4 million. Net monthly income after expenses is about $47,000. I heard something that might have been Victoria sitting down heavily. "You're a real estate investor," she said. "Yes," I confirmed. "Have been for 10 years. Started with a small duplex I bought for $180,000 when I was 22. Lived in one unit, rented the other. Saved aggressively, reinvested profits built from there. The graphic design work is real, but it's more of a hobby. My actual income comes from my property portfolio. And the lake house, she said, her voice shaking. Mom and Dad don't know you own it? They've never asked who bought it, I said. They assumed it was some random investor. They were too embarrassed about the foreclosure to inquire further. But you let them think. Last night you let them announce they were giving it to me. I let them announce what they believed to be true, I corrected. I didn't contradict them because I wanted to see if anyone would think to verify ownership before making grand gestures. This is insane, she said. This is absolutely insane. I have a moving truck here, Savannah. I have movers. We were going to start bringing furniture up today. We were going to spend the weekend here setting up. You should probably send them home, I suggested. Unless you'd like to rent the property. I could potentially work out a rental arrangement. Market rate for a 3-bedroom lakefront in Pine Ridge is about $3,800 per month. Rent it, she exploded. You want me to rent the lake house that was supposed to be gifted to me? It was never theirs to gift, I said calmly. Victoria, they lost the property in 2018. They haven't owned it for 6 years. The announcement last night was based on incorrect information. They're going to be devastated, she said, and now she sounded close to tears. Mom and Dad, they're going to be so humiliated. They made this big announcement in front of 100 people. Everyone knows. Everyone congratulated us. And now we have to tell them we don't actually own the property. You have to tell them the truth, I said. That the property was foreclosed on and subsequently purchased by someone else. Whether you mention that someone else is me is up to you. How can I not mention it's you? She demanded. The property manager already told me. He said Ms. Brooks purchased it. Everyone at the gate saw me get turned away. How am I supposed to explain this without saying my sister secretly bought the family lake house and never told anyone? Again, that's up to you, I said. But Victoria, I would suggest telling Mom and Dad the full truth. They deserve to know what actually happened to the property. Where are you right now? She asked suddenly. Are you at your apartment? Yes, I said. I'm coming over. We need to talk about this in person. Don't you dare leave. She hung up before I could respond. I made more coffee and waited. Victoria lived in Westchester, about 45 minutes away. The lake house was another 30 minutes north of the city. She'd probably need at least an hour and a half to get to me, maybe 2 hours if she called our parents first. The call came an hour later. Mom's number. Savannah, she said, her voice tight with stress. Victoria just called me with an insane story about the lake house. She says someone told her you own it? That it was foreclosed on? This has to be a mistake. Please tell me it's a mistake. It's not a mistake, Mom, I said gently. The lake house was foreclosed on by First National Bank in March 2018. I purchased it at auction. I've owned it for 6 years. I heard her breath catch. You've owned it? Our lake house. You bought our lake house. I bought 47 Lakeshore Drive from the bank after the foreclosure, I confirmed. The property wasn't yours to give to Victoria last night. I'm sorry, but you didn't own it. How could you do this? She demanded, anger bleeding through the shock. How could you buy our family property without telling us? Without even giving us a chance to do something about it? I offered to help before the foreclosure, I reminded her. I called you when I saw the proceedings had started. You told me you could handle it, that you didn't need charity from your struggling daughter. A month later the bank foreclosed. What was I supposed to do? Let some stranger buy it? You should have told us, she said. You should have told us you were the one who bought it. Do you have any idea how humiliating this is? We announced it to everyone last night. Everyone knows we were giving the lake house to Victoria. And now we have to tell them we don't even own it. You could have verified ownership before making the announcement, I said. We didn't think we needed to, she cried. We've always thought it was sold to some investor we didn't know. We never imagined it was you because you don't have that kind of money. I do have that kind of money, I said. I've had it for quite a while. You just never asked. Because you live like you're broke, she said. Your apartment, your car, your clothes, everything about your life says you're struggling financially. Everything about my life says I'm not wasteful, I corrected. I don't need a luxury car or designer clothes. I need functional transportation and comfortable attire. The difference in cost, I invest in properties that generate income. How much? She asked. How much are you really worth? My property portfolio is valued at approximately $12.4 million, I said. I have about $1.8 million in liquid assets, savings, investments, stocks. Total net worth is around $14 million. The silence on the other end lasted so long I thought she'd hung up. $14 million, she finally said. You have $14 million and you let us think you were struggling to make rent. I let you think what you assumed, I said. You saw my old car and simple apartment and decided I was poor. I never confirmed or denied it. I was curious to see if anyone would ever ask about my actual finances instead of making assumptions. Your father is devastated, she said. Victoria called him in hysterics. He's been trying to call the bank, trying to figure out what happened. When I told him you owned it, her voice broke. He actually cried, Savannah. Your father cried. That got to me more than I wanted to admit. Dad never cried. I'm sorry he's upset, I said honestly. But Mom, he's upset about a situation he created. He's upset about a property he lost because he couldn't make payments. The fact that I bought it and maintained it instead of letting it go to a stranger should be a relief, not a source of devastation. You should have told us, she repeated. You should have been honest about your financial situation. About everything. Should I have? I asked. Mom, think about last night. Dad's speech. You announced you were giving the lake house to Victoria because she deserves it more. Because she's built a successful life and I'm still finding my way. If I'd told you years ago that I was a successful real estate investor, would you have believed me? She was quiet. Would you? I pressed. Or would you have thought I was exaggerating, delusional, making up stories to feel better about my life? Be honest. I don't know, she admitted quietly. I think you do know, I said. I think if I told you 5 years ago that I owned a dozen properties and had millions in assets, you would have smiled and nodded and then continued treating me like the unsuccessful daughter who needed help. Because that narrative was comfortable for you. It made you feel needed, helpful, superior. That's not fair, she protested. Isn't it? I asked. You offered to have Victoria's friend get me a job interview. You worried about my old car and my simple apartment. You thought I was struggling when I was actually thriving. Because you never asked. You never looked past your assumptions. Victoria's on her way to your apartment, Mom said. Your father and I are coming too. We need to discuss this as a family. All right, I said. I'll be here. They arrived 90 minutes later, Victoria and Brandon first, then my parents 20 minutes after. I bussed them all up to my apartment. Victoria walked in and immediately stopped, looking around. This is your apartment? Yes, I said. It's huge, she said. This is at least 1,000 square feet. These windows, this exposed brick. Savannah, this is a luxury loft. It's a converted warehouse, I said. I like the aesthetic. What does a place like this rent for downtown? Brandon asked, his real estate developer brain clearly calculating. I wouldn't know, I said. I don't pay rent. I own the building. He blinked. You own the building. All 12 units, I confirmed. Bought it at a foreclosure auction in 2019 for $2.3 million. Renovated all the units. Current value is around $3.8 million. Monthly rental income from the other 11 units is about $28,000. Victoria sat down on my sofa without being invited. This is surreal. Your whole life is surreal. Mom and Dad arrived looking shell-shocked. Dad especially looked older than I'd seen him, his face drawn and pale. Savannah, he said heavily. We need to talk. Would you like coffee? I asked. Water. I have sparkling water if... We don't want beverages, Dad interrupted. We want answers. How long have you been hiding this? This wealth, these properties, this entire secret life. I haven't been hiding anything, I said calmly. I've been living my life. You've been assuming things about my life without asking questions. Those are different things. You bought our lake house, he said, his voice cracking. Our family lake house that we lost in the worst financial crisis of our lives. And you never told us. I tried to help before the foreclosure, I said. You refused. After the auction, I maintained the property, paid all the taxes and insurance, kept it in perfect condition. I could have told you, but I wanted to see if you'd ever be curious enough about my life to ask questions. What questions? Mom demanded. What were we supposed to ask? How about, how are you affording to live downtown? I suggested. Or, how did you pay us back that $800 so quickly? Or, what exactly does your work entail? Basic questions about your daughter's life. Instead, you assumed I was struggling and needed your pity. We were trying to help. Mom said. We thought you needed support. I needed you to see me, I said. Not the version of me you'd imagined, but who I actually am. I needed you to be curious, to ask questions, to want to know about my life beyond your assumptions. Brandon spoke up for the first time. Can I ask something? How did you get started in real estate? Most people don't have the capital to buy properties in their early 20s. I worked 3 jobs during college, I said. Saved aggressively. Graduated with no debt and $40,000 in savings. Used that as a down payment on a duplex. $180,000 purchase price. Lived in one unit, rented the other for $1,200 a month while my mortgage was $1,100. Saved the difference plus my job income. Sold the duplex 18 months later for $245,000. Used that profit to buy a small apartment building. Repeated the process. That's impressive, Brandon admitted. That's a smart strategy. But it's also high risk. Those early years you were leveraged to the hilt. What if the market had crashed? I researched extensively before every purchase, I said. Bought below market value in areas with strong fundamentals. Never overextended myself. Made conservative assumptions about rental income. By the time I bought the lake house in 2018, I already owned 6 other properties. I had the capital and experience to know it was a sound investment. 6 other properties, Dad repeated. In 2018, you owned 6 properties and never mentioned it to us. I mentioned my work in real estate several times, I said. You thought I meant I'd done some graphic design work for real estate companies. When I tried to explain, you glazed over and changed the subject. It was easier to let you believe what you wanted to believe. Victoria had been quiet, processing. Now she spoke. Last night at the anniversary party, when they announced they were giving me the lake house. You knew it wasn't theirs to give. You knew, and you just stood there smiling. Yes, I said. Why didn't you say something? She demanded. Why let Mom and Dad humiliate themselves in front of 100 people? Because saying something would have been even more humiliating for them, I said. Announcing at their anniversary party that they'd lost the property in foreclosure and their younger daughter had bought it? That would have been worse. So you let us all believe a lie, Victoria said. I let you believe what you already believed, I corrected. That the lake house was yours to receive, that I was the unsuccessful daughter, that Victoria deserves more because she's built a better life. I didn't create those beliefs. I just didn't challenge them. This is twisted, Victoria said. This whole situation is twisted. It's honest, I countered. For the first time in years, we're being completely honest about what's real. The lake house isn't yours. It's mine. I'm not struggling. I'm successful. You all made assumptions without asking questions. That's the truth. Mom was crying now. I feel like I don't know you at all. You don't, I agreed. You know the daughter you imagined I was. You've never met the daughter I actually am. Then tell us, Dad said. Tell us who you actually are. Tell us everything. I sat down across from them. I'm a real estate investor who spent 10 years building a portfolio of 17 properties. I specialize in distressed assets, foreclosures, estate sales, properties that need renovation. I buy below market value, improve them, and either rent them or sell them for profit. I've reinvested most of my earnings back into acquiring more properties. 17 properties, Mom said. Where? 12 are residential, apartment buildings, duplexes, single-family homes I rent out. 3 are commercial, a small office building, retail space, a mixed-use development. 2 are vacation properties including the lake house. And you manage all of this yourself? Brandon asked. I have a property management company that handles day-to-day operations, I said. They collect rent, handle maintenance, deal with tenant issues. I oversee strategy, make acquisition decisions, handle major renovations. I probably work 50 hours a week between property management and my actual graphic design clients. Why do you still do graphic design if real estate is so lucrative? Victoria asked. Because I enjoy it, I said simply. It's creative work that balances the business side of property management. Plus it maintains the cover that I'm a struggling freelancer, which has been educational. Educational how? Dad asked. It showed me what you really think of me, I said. When you thought I was unsuccessful, you pitied me, worried about me, offered to help. But you never respected me. Last night proved that. She deserves it more. That's what you said about Victoria. She deserves the family property more because she's successful and I'm not. We didn't mean, Mom started. You meant exactly that, I interrupted. Victoria built a life you admire. Brandon's real estate development company, their house in Westchester, their financial stability. I supposedly couldn't even afford car repairs. Of course she deserved the lake house more. Except I owned it already. And I own property worth more than Victoria and Brandon's entire net worth combined. That landed hard. Brandon went very still. How much more? He asked quietly. Your house in Westchester is worth what, $1.2 million? I said. You have about $400,000 in equity. Brandon's company is valued at maybe $3 million, but he owns 30%, so about $900,000. Combined net worth of roughly $1.3 million. My portfolio is worth $12.4 million, with debt of about $3.1 million, giving me equity of $9.3 million. Plus $1.8 million in liquid assets. I have 7 times your net worth. Brandon looked like I'd punched him. But we thought, Victoria started. You thought I was poor, I finished. I know. That was the point. I wanted to see how you'd treat me when you thought I had nothing. Turns out you treated me with pity and condescension. Helpful, concerned, but ultimately dismissive. I was the daughter who needed guidance, not the one who'd actually figured out how to build wealth. This isn't fair, Dad said. You deliberately deceived us. I lived my life quietly and let you make assumptions, I corrected. That's not deception. That's you not asking questions. What do you want from us? Mom asked. Why are you telling us all this now? Why not just let us keep thinking what we thought? Because last night you tried to give away something I owned to someone else, I said. That forced the issue. And honestly, I'm tired of pretending. I'm tired of letting you think I'm less than I am. I'm tired of the pity and the concern and the subtle implications that Victoria's the successful one and I'm still trying to find my way. So what happens now? Victoria asked. With the lake house, with everything? I considered. The lake house is mine. I've maintained it well, kept it vacant, paid all expenses. You're welcome to rent it at market rate if you want. Or you can walk away. Your choice. We can't afford $3,800 a month for a vacation rental, she said. Then I'll keep it vacant, I said. Or I'll find other renters. Or maybe I'll start using it myself. I own it. I get to decide. This is going to destroy Mom and Dad's reputation, Victoria said. Everyone at the party last night heard them give me the lake house. When word gets out that they didn't even own it, that they lost it in foreclosure, people will talk. People might talk, I agreed. Or you could tell the truth, that the property was foreclosed on years ago and has since been purchased and renovated by a private buyer. You don't have to tell them the buyer is me. But the property management company told you, Victoria said. The staff at the gate saw me get turned away. People will find out. Maybe, I said. Or maybe they'll just know the property changed hands years ago and move on. People are generally less interested in others' financial failures than you think. Mom stood abruptly. I need to leave. I can't. I need to process this. Everything we thought we knew about you is wrong. I don't even know what to think anymore. Think about the daughter who bought your family property when you lost it, I suggested. The daughter who maintained it, preserved it, kept it safe. Instead of thinking about the daughter who deceived you, think about the daughter who protected something you loved when you couldn't. He stared at me, tears streaming. You could have told us. You could have made us feel better about losing it. You could have asked, I countered. You could have been curious about my life. We both made choices, Mom. They left in silence. Mom and Dad first, then Victoria and Brandon. As they filed out of my apartment, I felt something shift. The pretense was gone. The comfortable lie they'd believed about my life had shattered. What came next, I wasn't sure. 2 days later, Dad called. "I've been thinking," he said without preamble. "About what you said. About us never asking questions. And you're right. We made assumptions and never challenged them." "Okay," I said carefully. "I want to understand," he said. "Really understand. Can I take you to lunch this week? Just us. I want to hear about your business, how you built it, what your actual life looks like." "I'd like that," I said honestly. "And Savannah?" he said. "I'm sorry. For dismissing you, for assuming you were struggling, for saying Victoria deserved more. You deserved to be seen. We failed you." "Thank you," I said quietly. "That means a lot." Mom called later that day with a similar request. Then Victoria surprisingly. "I've been thinking about what you said," Victoria admitted. "About me deserving the lake house more. That must have hurt. I'm sorry." "I appreciate that," I said. "Can I ask you something?" she said. "Why didn't you rub it in our faces? You could have gloated, could have made us feel terrible. You were actually really kind about it." "Because spite isn't the point," I said. "I didn't build my business to prove you wrong. I built it because I saw opportunities and had the discipline to execute. Your opinion of me didn't change what I was building. It just showed me I needed to build it independently of your approval." "That's mature," she said. "More mature than I would have been." "Probably," I agreed. Over the next month, I had lunch with Dad, coffee with Mom, dinner with Victoria and Brandon. Real conversations where they asked actual questions and I gave honest answers. They met my property manager, toured some of my buildings, saw the spreadsheets and financials that proved this wasn't a fantasy. They started to see me. The real me. The lake house remained mine. I started using it on weekends, bringing friends up, enjoying the property I'd saved and maintained. Mom and Dad asked if they could visit sometimes. I said yes. Victoria never rented it, but she also stopped acting like it should have been hers. 6 months after the anniversary party, I hosted a small gathering at the lake house. Just family. Mom and Dad, Victoria and Brandon, a few cousins. We grilled on the deck, swam in the lake, watched the sunset from the dock. As the evening wound down, Dad pulled me aside. "Thank you," he said simply. "For what?" I asked. "For saving this place," he said. "For keeping it in the family when we couldn't. For being successful even though we couldn't see it. For being patient with us while we figured out who you really are." "You're welcome," I said. "I'm proud of you," he said. "I should have said that years ago. I'm sorry it took a crisis for me to say it now." "Better late than never," I said. I looked out at the lake, at the house I'd bought from the bank, at the family who finally saw me. I'd built an empire in secret while they thought I was failing. I'd owned the property they tried to give away. I'd waited 6 years for them to ask the right questions. And now, finally, they were asking. It wasn't perfect. Families never are. But it was honest. And that was worth more than any property, any portfolio, any amount of wealth. They saw me now. The real me. And that made everything worthwhile.